Resurrecting Internment, How Racism and Fear Drive Project 2025, and How We Fight Back. Project 2025 is not just about policies. It's about reviving some of the darkest moments in American history. Picture this. Laws used to justify World War II internment camps are being revived, and immigrants could once again be labeled as enemies of the state. Tonight, we're going to break down how Project 2025 threatens to repeat one of the gravest mistakes in U.S. history. Project 2025 is reviving the Alien Enemies Act, a law once used to justify the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. Now they want to target immigrants again, labeling them enemies of the state and reviving the internment camp mentality. We don't need to exaggerate. Project 2025 lays it out all in the text. Tonight, we'll walk you through their plans to revive the Alien Enemies Act, allowing the government to label immigrants as enemies and detain them. Stay with us until the end for concrete actions you can take. But first, follow Turn Left PAC on your favorite social media channels and subscribe. Check out our Resist Project 2025 Reel series. Joining me today is Richard Ojeda, who's just returned from visiting Auschwitz, a site that bears witness to some of the darkest moments in history. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, anytime, John. I always enjoy being on your show, brother.
Well, Project 2025 aims to use the Alien Enemies Act to justify detaining immigrants, drawing terrifying parallels to the World War II internment camps. And this isn't just a history, it's a warning for our future. You recently visited Auschwitz, site of a profound historical significance. How do you see the lessons from these places connecting to Project 2025's proposal to revive internment camps and label immigrants as enemies of the state?
Yeah, this is about as un-American as it gets. I will tell you that if you talk about the internment camps and the things that they did to the Japanese people in this country, they basically placed them in encampments. And what happened to all their stuff? What happened to their properties? Many of them had it all taken from them. And if you pay attention to the things that went on in Dachau and Auschwitz and places like that, you know, people that were of the Jewish faith were basically told, you have a short period of time to grab all of your most important items in a suitcase. And that's all you can bring with you. And they left with that. And all that stuff, once they got to Auschwitz, Dachau, and any other concentration camp, all that stuff was taken from them. And if you go today to Dachau, and this is one of the things that was absolutely amazing, and I don't mean amazing good, but I'm talking about like, wow, it hits you deep in the chest. There were rooms in Auschwitz. There was one room that was probably 30 meters long, and it was filled with nothing but human hair. And when you realize that Nazi soldiers were fighting during World War II wearing socks that were actually made from the hair of people that had their heads shaved and then went straight to the gas chamber. And, you know, when I see people talking about the Hispanics and the Latino people, Donald Trump is echoing Adolf Hitler. You know, when Donald Trump's ex-wives said that he kept Mein Kampf on his book stand next to his bed, that the only thing they ever saw him reading was basically speeches that were given by Adolf Hitler. When you see Donald Trump talking about, you know, repeat something 3 times and then it sticks, those are tactics that were created by Adolf Hitler. And Donald Trump is basically telling us that that's the path that he wants this country to be on. And we can't go back in time. This is one of the reasons why it's important that we cannot allow these people to basically steal our election from us, but our education, because they want to destroy our education. So Donald Trump said that if they are talking to children in schools in Las Vegas or Los Angeles, and they start talking about how our land at one time belonged to the Native Americans before any of us were ever here, and how it was stolen from the Native Americans, and then how our nation was built on the backs of slavery, yeah, he says that he will defund those schools. That's the truth. So we're going to defund schools that tell the truth. And if you are acceptable with that, then you are part of the problem.
You're exactly right. And he is intent on doing this all over again. And these internment camps, like those that were during World War II, were rooted in racial prejudice and fear. Um, how do you think Project 2025's approach to immigrants is going to play into the same patterns of racism and fear that we saw in the past?
Well, that's what's already taken place. I mean, you've got people that are Latino and Hispanic that are automatically thought as being undocumented workers, people that are here just to try to steal something from us. And I say this many times, if a person from Guatemala can walk all the way to West Virginia and take your job in the coal mine, then maybe you made some poor decisions in life, and maybe it's your fault, not their fault. But once again, let's be serious. Nobody's walking all the way to West Virginia to take those daggone garbage jobs that are predatory jobs where the companies basically work you to death and there's nothing you could do about it. I mean, we're seeing people. And, it's like, you always are going to hear when 9/11 happened, and everybody automatically assumed that, it was the Muslim faith. I mean, we had people that were Americans, that were Muslim Americans, that were attacked in the street. Because why? Because people were spewing hatred. And when you spew hatred enough, loud enough, and get as many people as possible to start believing it, then you have what you have. When Donald Trump called people that come from Mexico murderers and rapists, that's a slap in the face. And we've got a lot of Hispanic and Latino American people in this country that pay taxes, that get up every day, work hard to try to provide for their families. And, this vilifies them. And once again, in terms of these camps and rounding people up, when they made it to these places like Dachau and Auschwitz, they took their suitcases. They took the clothing inside the suitcases. They took the jewelry. They took the money. They confiscated all of that. And when the Jewish people were dead, they took their gold teeth that they had. And oh, by the way, did these people, were they ever able to go back and get their homes back? Were they able to go back after World War II and walk right back to their area and get the place that they were living? No, they lost those areas, and other people took them. There's a great movie. It's called Conspiracy. And it takes place, and what it is it's bringing all these key leaders of the Nazi movement in Germany together during World War II. And that's where they come up with the plan called the final solution. The final solution was, okay, we're going to ship as many people to these places, and you're going to push them all through gas chambers and try to kill as many as you can. And we're going to get rid of their bodies by using ovens. And that's how they're going to, that's what it was about. But part of it was the leader, the main guy, lands his airplane. And when he walks into this place, he says, oh, this place is beautiful. It's going to be mine after the war. It belonged to a Jewish doctor. Let that sink in. And that's true. It's going to be mine because he's going to take it. That's how it was. And you know what? We don't need to go down this path again.
You're absolutely right. We've seen before what happens when fear and racism are allowed to guide policy. Internment camps become reality. And after the break, we'll talk about the human impact, what it means to live under the constant fear of being labeled an enemy.
When I ran for Congress, we flipped more Trump voters blue than any other congressional race in the country. We did this by calling out the GOP's lies and speaking truth against their $1 million attack ads. I've now partnered with Turn Left, and we're taking the fight to the extremists like Marge the Trainwreck Green, Ted Cruz, and Josh Hawley, to name a few. And I'm asking each and every one of you all to donate $25 today to the group that is absolutely helping to send these jackaloons packing. It's time to speak truth to power and turn left.
The Alien Enemies Act isn't just a piece of legislation. It's a threat to the everyday lives of immigrants. Imagine living in constant fear that you or your loved ones could be detained without cause, simply for being labeled an enemy. Richard, what does it mean for a community when families live in fear of being labeled enemies of the state and detained just because of where they come from?
I mean, think about right now. Think about if you are a Latino person or you're Hispanic, and we're in the middle of a race. And once again, this is probably the most important election of our lives, because right now it's literally fascism or freedom. And that's the path. And we have a lot of people that are leaning towards fascism. They don't realize that Donald Trump is literally wanting to create a world where he is a dictator for life. And, that's the path. And imagine living in an area where you're worried that just because of the outcome of an election could be the difference between you being allowed to stay in the United States of America or being uprooted and sent packing. Look, my grandfather was from Mexico. My father was born in America, but then as soon as he was born, went back to Mexico until he was 7 years old. What does that make me? I mean, make no mistake about it. I'm sure there are plenty of people that would love nothing more than for Richard Ojeda to be uprooted and sent packing. But once again, this is the United States of America, and we're better from immigrants. If you look at the impact that immigrants have had on America's success, it's huge. And, what's sad is that racism is really the cause here. Let me tell you something. Donald Trump and all those that support him, they don't care if Canadians come here. They don't care. They don't care if Germans come here. They don't care. They don't like light brown people to dark brown people. And that's the way that it is. And that's what really bothers me, because let me tell you something. When Donald Trump says he's going to round up 2 to 3 million Latino folks, do the Latino people, especially those in Florida, think that doesn't mean them? Do they think, well, but I voted for Donald Trump? Do they think that Donald Trump's going to say, okay, you get a pass? No, Donald Trump does not like light brown to dark brown people. And if Donald Trump can get rid of all of them in one fell swoop, he will. Think about being born on the other side of the fence. Everybody that was born on this side of the fence won the lottery at birth. You won the lottery when you were born in America. And a lot of people don't deserve what they have, but they just happen to be born here. But imagine you were born on the other side of the fence and you don't have the opportunities that people have in America. Don't you want those opportunities? Yes, you do. Which is why you have parents that will try to literally walk to America, many of them seeking asylum, which is legal, by the way. And what took place was one of the biggest atrocities since World War II. They stole the children from parents that were basically coming to America for a better life. They stole those children. Stephen Miller was the one that actually told Donald Trump that, yes, we need to even take the children away from the mothers that are basically allowing the child to suckle from their breasts, breastfeeding. They stole those children. They stuck them in cages. Some of those children died throughout this entire debacle. But imagine being a child stripped from your parents, and then you're thrown in a cage, and they were there for over 2 years. Over 2 years. Let me tell you something. Everybody that spends time in Iraq and Afghanistan will return home with something. We're talking post-traumatic stress disorder. You don't have to be outside the wire kicking in doors. Mortars and rockets land all the time, and they hurt and kill people. And I don't care. You may be a military cook. You may be a military legal assistant, and you're never going outside the wire and knocking on doors. But if you watch somebody 20 feet from you get absolutely decimated because of a mortar or a rocket, it's going to go with you for the rest of your life. Do you think those children aren't suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder after being ripped away from their parents, and their parents left and did not come back for a couple of years? Do you know that Joe Biden, when he became the president of the United States, his administration had to go to work immediately trying to find the parents for these kids, because Donald Trump's regime didn't even bother to get the daggone names and contact information from the parents that had their children stole from them. That right there tells you how bad this really can be. And that tells you what we will see again if we allow Donald Trump ever back in office.
Yeah, oh my gosh. And it's scary that they just want us to forget about all of this, all of that trauma. They just forget about everything. You know, from your time visiting historical sites where mass detentions occurred, what do you think people today need to understand about the trauma that comes from these types of policies?
This is why it's so important. You know, if you ever find yourself in Germany, you know, if you ever go to Munich, just know that within 15 minutes from the city center of Munich, you can be at Dachau concentration camp. If you go to Poland, take the time and go to Auschwitz, because when you see those places and you start to realize how horrible that people can be to another human, the atrocities, you know, and understand that, you know, in Auschwitz, you had a train track that went right through the center opening of the actual concentration camp. And the trains would stop right there, and they would pull everybody off the trains. And there would be a person, usually a doctor. Sometimes it was a woman they called the angel of death. And what they did was they would basically point left or right. And you had no idea what that meant. If they thought that you looked strong enough where you could work, they pointed you to this area. But if they thought that you were old, if you were weak, every single child that got off of that train, with the exception of twins, was sent directly to the gas chamber. So when you look at the photographs, when you get to Auschwitz and you see all these children out there holding hands, you have to understand that within 30 minutes of them taking that picture, they were all pushed into a daggone shower and were murdered with poison gas. You know, the things, the atrocities that you see, this is why it's important for us to make sure that we learn true history. When you have people like Donald Trump that is literally saying that if we allow a place to teach that America was stolen from the Native Americans, which it was, and that America was built on the backs of slavery, which it was, Donald Trump's answer is we're going to defund them. We're going to defund those schools. If schools teach the truth about the history of our country, we will defund them. And you know what? Honestly, I want my children to know the truth. And I think that anybody out there that is trying to hide the truth, well, there's a reason why they want to hide it. And the reason for that's because they want to try it again. They want to do something again and try to get away with it. And that's the path that we are on with Donald Trump. And I got it. People, well, he didn't do it the first time. Let me tell you something. He is only running for one reason, and that's to avoid accountability. That's to stay out of jail. And let me tell you something. That man deserves prison for the classified documents that he has stolen, for the mob that he knew was armed that he sent to the Capitol, where on page 8 of the indictment, it says Donald Trump texted somebody and it said, make them riot. Remember, Donald Trump was the one that said, take down the magnetometers. They're not here to hurt me. They knew that the people that were standing out in the crowd that wasn't coming into the area where Donald Trump was giving his speeches, Donald Trump was like, bring them in. And they were like, nope, they don't want to come through because some of them have guns. And that's when Donald Trump said, take down the magnetometers. They're not here to hurt me. That tells you everything you need to know about good old Donald Trump.
Couldn't agree with you more. When you start targeting entire communities based on fear and prejudice, the trauma is generational. And next, we'll discuss how we can fight back against these policies and make sure history doesn't repeat itself.
Today, we have an amazing show for you. Join myself, special guests, and celebrities. What's going on, Ice-T? Andrew Yang.
Somebody else was hopping on.
Oh, hold on.
What's going on, Battle?
As we roast GQP Jackaloons.
He may not be a real businessman, but he is one hell of a con artist. That's what it is. That's what they got indicted for. Treason and sedition.
And addresses the headlines of the day.
They must be held accountable.
Live streaming every night.
I got more time in a friggin' port in a friggin' combat zone than you've probably got in the military.
This is Ojeda Live.
We've talked about the damage Project 2025 could do, but now let's focus on solutions. What we can do as a society to fight back and protect our communities from these harmful policies. Richard, in your view, how can communities today stand up against these policies and prevent history from repeating itself?
I mean, at this point right now, it is the election. You can vote early, and if you can vote early, vote early. Understand that there could be all kinds of things that could happen on election day that could basically keep you from being able to cast your vote. So if you have the ability to vote early, vote early. Folks, at the end of the day, it's important that people try their best to be as educated as possible. Project 2025 is out. Project 2025 is very, very damaging to people that are in unions, to the working class, to the elderly. There are all kinds of things that Project 2025 is trying to do. You have to understand that we just watched a town in the western part of North Carolina completely washed off of the map. Asheville literally lost everything. And these are not areas that are usually, getting major storms like this. This is happening because of basically climate change, global warming. And you have to understand that Project 2025 is going to do away with FEMA and the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. NOAA is the organization that tells you that a tornado is coming and it's going to hit right here. It's the one that tells you that you've got a wildfire in Northern California and it's moving in this direction. It tells you that you've got a hurricane coming and it's going to hit Florida and this is the path that it's on, so that you have a little bit of a warning. They are going to get rid of that with Project 2025. And oh, by the way, why do you think they've been vilifying FEMA agents? You had people that had to pick up and leave an area that was needing the assistance, but they had to get the people out of there for fear of people attacking FEMA workers. Because why? Because Donald Trump vilifies them. Why? Because Project 2025 will do away with that. There are all kinds of things that Project 2025 talks about that people need to wake up. And you need to wake up. You need to pay attention. You need to pay attention to these indictments with Donald Trump. There's a lot of things that people need to know about, because make no mistake about it, it's going to affect you. It will affect you greatly. If you live in Florida and you allow Donald Trump and his henchmen to daggone bring Project 2025 about, then you don't have no reason to gripe when you have no clue if there is a daggone hurricane barreling down towards you and it wipes you out. Because why? Because you support the administration that wants to do away with it. You support the administration that don't care about the elderly in this country. That's exactly where we're at. So education is the key, and we need more of it.
Absolutely. Education is the key. And definitely, thank you for being here. That concludes our podcast for today. Richard, is there anything that you want to leave us with? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, first off, understand that you can see me every night on Ojeda Live at Facebook and YouTube. But most importantly than paying attention to what I say, is make sure that you are registered and you are ready to vote. Don't let anybody take that capability away from you. When you go, if you are a person of color, let me tell you something. You better call your county clerk to make sure that you are still on the rolls. And you better call your county clerk to make sure that your polling station will be open. Because remember, in Louisville, Kentucky, they shut down every single polling station. But the day before the election, on election day, they shut down every single polling station of color except one. And they required every person in that area that was of color one polling station. And at 8:30 at night, when they were going to shut the doors, there was still 1,000 people outside banging on the windows that wanted to cast their vote. And the judges had to come forward and say, keep it open. You got to make sure, because make no mistake about it, especially if you are a person of color, if they can steal your ability to vote, they will. And if you go to the polling station and they say they don't have you, you demand to get a write-in ballot on the spot. But whatever you do, do not leave. And I would recommend getting the Secretary of State's phone number and putting it in your phone, because make no mistake about it, you can call them too right there, and do not leave until you get your voice heard.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Richard. You just are amazing, and you bring such expertise. And thank you so much for taking the time for being with us today.
I always appreciate you, John. All the way, airborne.
Today, we covered some of the most alarming aspects of Project 2025, focusing on the revival of the Alien Enemies Act and its potential to bring back internment camps under the guise of national security. We explored the deep racial prejudices that fueled the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, and how Project 2025 threatens to repeat these mistakes by labeling immigrants as enemies of the state. Our guest connected these proposals with lessons learned from Auschwitz, highlighting how dangerous it is when fear and racism drive government policies. We also talked about the real human impact, how communities would be torn apart, families living in constant fear, and the generational trauma that such policies can create. Finally, we discussed the importance of fighting back and standing up for our neighbors, drawing from history to ensure that these horrors are never repeated. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a call to action. The stakes are high, and we can't sit on the sidelines. Go to turnleftpac.org and get involved in the fight against Project 2025. Join the community, stay informed, and take part in real action that resists these dangerous policies. This isn't just about politics. It's about protecting the people we live and work with every day. Together, we can make sure that fear, racism, and division don't define our future. Let's make sure this country lives up to its ideals.